Like, how does your friend want to sit across the 45-minute coffee date that you get once every 11 weeks, when things quiet down enough to let it happen? They want you present. And so if nothing else, then for their sake, try to summon that for them.
Welcome to Mental Stillness. My name is Derek, and I'm excited that somehow you stumbled across this podcast. One of my goals when starting this podcast was to bring mental health conversations into leadership circles. Well, I want to welcome a special guest today, and just really excited to have this conversation, and it's with Nell Derick Debevoise Dewey. And so even though she spells her name incorrectly from my bias positioning, I still welcome you to the podcast.
Well, I really appreciate that, Derek EK. I appreciate
One of
that
those.
openness, open-mindedness.
Yep.
Yeah. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you. Why don't you share with the audience just a little bit about who you are, the work that you do, before we jump into the content.
Yeah. So I am working as a subtraction activist these days. I might be the first one people have met. I think I'm your first, right?
You are.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, I get that a lot. But here's the thing, so I started my career in nonprofit for 10 years. I worked internationally, and then I went to business school. We can get into why that pivot if it's useful. And since business school, I've been helping people try to make sense of success, basically, like what does a good life mean to them? And primarily, the kind of piece I'm wrestling with is having a career and being ambitious and successful and contributing and getting paid for that and making the world a better place. And critical third dimension, being happy and healthy and well as an individual human. The subtraction piece comes because I have seen very personally, and we can get into that too, how doing too much of that, which is really compelling when it's good for the world and good for you and good for your company. Of course, we want to do more. And there's psychology behind that, which we could also get to. But right now, what I see is the helpers being really overwhelmed, overworked, discouraged, tired, maybe burnt out or headed there. And we need them. We need you. And so I am hoping to spread this message of subtraction to understand how we can do less of what does not serve anymore so that we have more energy for what matters most.
I love this, Nell. And the big reason that I wanted to have you on to talk to the audience and just to have this conversation, it's like so much of even just the heart of why I started this podcast of like, what's the impact of oftentimes the good work that we do, the toll that it takes. And so when you asked the question, you said a second ago, like, okay, trying to have this journey and exploration to understand what success is. So what would you say success is?
Mm. To me, it really comes down to this 3D-ness. And so I'll say it even more explicitly. It is my last name. So Nell
That worked
3D
out.
comes from my mom, my dad, and my husband. I didn't pick him for that reason, but here we are. Um, but the idea is simultaneously pursuing goals for me, everything about me, my physical, mental, intellectual, spiritual well-being. We, which is absolutely my career, my team, my company, and my personal we, my family, chosen or blood. And finally, the world. Um, the important thing I'll say about the world piece is that it's not shame-based. It's not trying to cure cancer or save the rainforest, because no one of us can do that on our own, right? It's our 1/8 billionth, the little slice of healing the world that is ours to do. And so to me, success is those 3 dimensions being in harmony or integration. I won't say balance, because I think that describes kind of a static situation that's just not realistic in my experience. But success is really feeling like I am investing my time, money, attention, energy in a composition of those 3 dimensions that brings joy.
You threw it out there around like it seems like you had some life lessons and own personal entry point that kind of catapulted maybe you into this work because of your own lived experience. And so do you care to share what was that for you? Because I think that it probably is gonna connect with some listeners.
So I worked in nonprofit for 10 years, kind of like digging to get as close to changing lives as I could, right? For a while I was kind of at an international HQ and I was connected with programs, but finally I was living in the West Bank in a refugee community in this community center where we were delivering programming around mental health for kids and women and university students. And I was like all in. I was like, this is so aligned with my purpose. I am seeing the people whose lives I'm changing. I'm learning a lot. I'm bringing resource to this community. It's amazing. Um, and then my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer, tragically young, and died not long after that diagnosis because it was nasty brain cancer. And I didn't go to his funeral. I was halfway around the world in the Middle East from California where he lived. I didn't have a ton of money as a nonprofit employee, and I was busy. The kids needed me. And not long after that, which didn't land great, but I didn't really do anything about it. But within the year, my marriage fell apart and I was getting divorced. And so now this single dimension world focus that I had taken with my career, leaving the we, certainly on the personal side, to crumble, really, and disappointing myself in terms of the daughter I wanted to be, the half sister, the wife, the life partner, was really not in harmonious integration at that point, just to say it lightly. And so, yeah, that was my move to business school, back to the US, a little closer to friends and family. And in retrospect, I was able to kind of put labels on that me, we world triangle that was so important.
Thanks for just your vulnerability and the authenticity there. Um,
Yeah.
though, and then so stepping into that next chapter after that one of like, okay, there's been some self-discovery, there's some painful lessons that kinda shaped, that next season, and so, I don't know, when you think about, like, high performance and when you think about
Mm.
being someone that is driven, that is motivated, like, what I don't know, how did that inform you moving forward to be, I think, a healthier,
Yeah.
more sustainable model? Like, what did that look like for you moving forward that's tangible?
Yeah. So, look, I finished business school and started a company. So it wasn't like VC
You put your
backed
degree to
tech high
use, it sounds
growth.
like, you know?
I sure did. Um, but I worked like a maniac. I mean, I loved it, and so I certainly was still working like crazy. I think a few things helped. I met a man who's now my second husband and Dewey, rounding out my 3 Ds, and in that way, he really did. So he worked in finance, but he was on a trading desk where his hours were like 7 or 7:30 in the morning till 4:30, 4 or 5, but, like, period, end of story. Nothing on the weekends, nothing on evenings. He really didn't travel much. His clients were big and in New York City where we were, so, he had real boundaries around his work, and I am so grateful for that, very tangibly, tactically, like,
That was not your world, right?
it was not my
Mm.
world, first of all, but it was such a helpful kind of external guardrail on my founder self, who, frankly, left to my own devices as a high performer, as someone of ambition with real purpose, I would have been at events every night. I would have been working on the weekends, sending emails, doing research, writing. I would have been 24/7. Hopefully not totally because of my learnings from the first decade, but I know myself, I think if that we dimension, the learning from the first divorce, certainly, but then also just his boundaries weren't there, that was really helpful for me. Um, and then I would say when I came back to New York, speaking of healthy, I had lived in Europe and the Middle East where I think just naturally, effortlessly, life is a lot healthier. There's a lot more social connection. The food is fresher and less toxic and less chemical. It's just healthier. And so coming to New York, not a healthy place, right? Like lights, alcohol, food, cement, 24/7, not a lot of oxygen, very competitive, very intense. And so I think partially as a reaction to that, I was very intentional about exercise, about food-ish, getting outside and getting out of the city. So yeah, those are a few of the kind of like external, really like tactical things that I think helped me stay on track in that era.
You talk about subtraction, how is that different than you referenced the boundaries that were in place with your husband's, kinda
Mm.
job and the structure there, so are boundaries the same as subtraction as you define it? If not, what's the nuance or what's the difference?
So I talk about systematic subtraction, which is an important qualifier because it's a bit different from, God bless Tim Ferriss and the 4-Hour Work Week. I think that helped so many people think differently about work and life, and I think that's a real gift, different from what I'm talking about. So systematic subtraction really takes this idea of systems thinking, which simply put is just the idea that everything in our life is connected. Everything in our bodies, right? Our hearts to our skin, to our brain, our family systems, our companies, our industries, like all of this, these are all of different levels of system. And so if we recognize that reality, we see all these opportunities to connect dots and make our efforts pay off in more than one way. And so now it's not just about boundaries of like, I don't have meetings on Saturday. It can be about like, I don't do meetings that invade problematically and repetitively on family time. Okay. So that's now kind of a system, right? Where I can think about that and like, well, when is family time? And is there a meeting that can only happen on Saturdays because that's when that person is free and that person is really important to my business? And can I swap some family time for Monday morning to have an extended drive to school and breakfast ritual so that I don't feel so bad about carving out 45 minutes for that meeting on Saturday or whatever? Right, but it's that kind of, like, connective thinking rather than these linear, rigid boundaries.
This method kind of cultivates, like, an assessment of your values is what I'm trying to get at of, like you said before, like, "I'm not gonna do the meeting on Saturday because that kind of infringes upon family time." So do you find that by stripping things away, then you start to really figure out what's important? Or is
Mm.
it, "I understand what's important, therefore I strip things away," and probably both, but I'm just curious where your head goes with it.
I love that. It is a great question. I am very much a proponent of insight through action. I think a lot of my studies were about pedagogy and like whatever the old saying is, tell me and I'll forget, show me and I may remember, involve me and I will know how to do it. And so I think that's 1,000% true. When I was talking and working more on purpose, that was always my thing too. I'm like, don't try to like sit in a room and script some beautiful 18-word purpose statement. Like, go out
Yeah.
in the
Live your
world. Did you
life.
like
Yeah.
that? Did you feel live your life and see what happens and start to notice patterns? So I absolutely think it goes both ways. And so I really encourage people, we can talk specifically stop, drop, and roll, but I encourage people to experiment with this, and so I think those little experiments can indeed reveal values. Be like, ooh, that didn't feel good at all, actually. I really care about that meeting that I've been having on Saturdays, so I've gotta find another way to fit it in.
Yeah. And I believe that and to my core to be so true as well. It's like when people are operating outside of their values, and the negative impact that has on people's psychological well-being is incredible. It's and it sneaks up on us, right? It definitely has that, and so just being able to have boundaries and make, really craft your environments in a way that reflect and amplify your values. For the listeners, for me, maybe this is as much for me as anybody else, but like it's so important to have those values prioritized.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think that's so true. And there's an interesting resource. I don't know if you've come across Susie Welch and her work at NYU. She's developed this values bridge, which is, the latest of many values things. And it's all research based and validated. So I think she's determined kind of 16, maybe. Some have 7, some have 30, whatever. But it's a quiz essentially that you can take for 69.99 or whatever it is. What I really like is that, so you have your top 5 and your bottom 5, and then the 11 kind of fall in the middle. But in the assessment or in the report, she calls out potential conflicts between either top values or what is a top value and a bottom value for you, and where those might be in friction, which I think is such a helpful, it's a very action oriented kind of approach rather than like, well, family and success, or some of these or honesty, or, I think it's easy to be kind of vague with these. Anyway, so I'm a fan. I've been using that a little bit just myself for now, not with clients yet, but it's a really interesting one, to just help put words and language to what your values seem to be, and then call out that, if family and work centrism are both top 5 values, there might be some
Some
Saturday
friction.
meeting
Yeah,
frictions.
yeah.
And so don't, you know, just know that and proceed
Yeah, don't
accordingly.
be shocked by it, allow it to inform you, and then there's gonna be times where maybe that value's more prioritized than the other, and that's the reality of your wiring or your value.
Totally. And, I think that the systems thinking piece of where, yes, sometimes there are trade offs and we just have to be okay with that. And I think when we open ourselves to this systematic reality, we see opportunities for win win wins. So she shared a great example that was true for her, that family centrism was high ish, but achievement and work centrism were much higher. And so she said the day that she shared that with her kids and said, look, I will help you become the best people you want to be, and I want you to do that for me as well. And, like, I love my work. So, if I can, if you ask me over dinner about my workday, that'll really make my day, my night, and I'll give you, and I'm happy to do the same for you, whether it's about work or whether it's about, some outdoor adventure you've been on. So I think it's that too. It's like accepting who we are in all its weirdness or non-traditionality or just uniqueness, and really living into that.
Well, you had referenced the, stop, drop, and roll,
Mhm.
so share about that.
Yeah. So this is the 3-step subtraction sequence. It also is fire safety for those of us who grew up 80s, probably maybe a little 70s. The big fireman walked in with an axe and they were like, if something on your body is on fire and you're like, what? That could happen? That's terrifying. You stop. You don't run around like crazy looking for the fire extinguisher.
Early
You just stop,
traumatization for
drop to the
many,
ground and
those
roll.
school functions. Yeah,
Dreams
yeah.
of flaming jeans.
Well, we had the
But
little trailer they would pull in the parking lot that would pipe in the smoke and, fake smoke or whatever's, and had to crawl through and get from upstairs to downstairs and find your way out, like, it was pretty cool.
oh,
Yeah,
wow. That's very experiential.
very
Speaking
it
of,
was
no wonder you're such a fan of learning by experience.
absolutely. Carry on though, sorry to
We just had a guy with an axe. I mean,
yeah,
that was cool, but,
we had a bigger
um,
budget, I guess, so
I guess, yeah, I know. That I was in Hartford at that point, so there you go. Um, I think the funny kind of fun uniting theme is that it's not about anything outside. You have all the resources to put your fire out right here. But more specifically, stop in my system is not like a sabbatical, right? It's not about going to meditate with a monk on the mountain. It's right here in your seat, wherever that might be, in the mirror, brushing your teeth, at breakfast, in the meeting. Stop and gather some data, whether that's my heart is racing, or sales are tanking, or I just got this job promotion offer that I'm not sure that I want. Whatever the data is, get some information, really eyes wide open and be with what is. Not always easy. Super simple. And then, only then do we drop, right? This is the actual subtraction, kind of the thrill of letting go of something. And this is where I was referring to we experiment. It's not like I'm never, that's the difference between boundaries. I'm never going to have a meeting on the weekend again. No, we're experimenting, right? What if I didn't take Saturday and Sunday meetings? What if I did take Saturday morning meetings and enroll the kids in a nature camp? Win, win, win. We come back and reunite for lunch and have the rest of the weekend, right? So the drop needs to be really experimental so that you can learn through action. The role, finally, is really, in my opinion, where the magic happens. And this is that dot connecting, right? Recognizing the system and saying, okay, how can I do that meeting in a way that enhances these other dimensions of my life as well, rather than just optimizing for this one object on my calendar without considering what's outside.
I'm thinking about listeners who they're in their car, they're hearing this, like, "Oh, that'd be nice. Stop. Get permission to
Mm.
stop. That sounds wonderful." What's that like? An experience or where you've seen a client engage this in the transformation that took place in their life?
Mhm. Yeah. It's the whole scale, it's the whole range. So I'll start at the top, maybe uh aspirational, that stop that does really sound good. And one client took a sabbatical. So she did kind of go all the way to say I really gotta stop. She had just been on the success track and getting more and more responsibility, more and more direct reports and salary and all
Yeah,
of that.
the train was moving
And
quickly, right?
the train was moving, and good for her. She was an amazing leader, delivered a lot, earned a lot, learned a lot. It was all good, and had gotten to be just too much. She really felt like she had lost herself, which I think is a common sensation. And so she took a sabbatical. She didn't know exactly what it was going to be. Got really into some of the creative work that she loves, did some facilitation, did some freelance. It wasn't about retiring at all. And it called me one day and was like, "I took a job." And she had kind of been like, "I don't know, this might be retirement. Like, I don't know that I'll ever go back to full time." But she subtracted what she experimented with dropping in those 8 or 9 months was her identity being wholly wrapped up in her work. And so she took this job as a job that she was excited about, committed to, working hard for, but that wasn't going to be her whole identity. And look, she's grinding, she's working pretty hard, and she saves Tuesday night dinners with the kids for fun night. She still does the creative facilitation that she was doing quarterly. So that's, a more extreme version. The smaller version is the guy who was like, "It took me 4 attempts to get into my email inbox to write you this, but thanks to this stop, drop, and roll daily practice that we've been doing to really break it down and make it teeny, I realized that I hate, am not very good at, and am not the best person to lead this committee for new business at the firm where I'm a partner." And so I passed it off. And in the 4 times that I've tried to come to my email inbox and get this draft off to you, she has taken over and it's going swimmingly. So, that was in his Zoom loading moments and toothbrushing like, he didn't take a 9-month sabbatical, he didn't even have a 30-minute kind of strategy planning. It was just this, like, drip, drip, drip every day of, like, what if doing less is as good as or better than doing more? And then you start seeing the world differently and the opportunities kind of emerge, and some of them are not possible because you've just gotta do that thing. But others actually become possible, and you experiment, and you see how they go.
Really important for people to hear, especially if people are in a state of overwhelm in their role, which is a lot of my clients. I'm sure a lot of your clients, they're,
Mhm.
um, it's why we keep having clients, right? It's just this reality of, like, people who want to do well, they wanna do they're passionate about what they do, but they just get to a spot of overwhelm, but For you to say it's like this is about dealing with what you have inside of you as you are right now is such an empowering thing to hear when someone's overwhelmed and they think, I can't tie my shoe, let alone make a decision about my future. Like it's people staying overwhelmed long enough, they really get a diminished vantage point of themselves and viewpoint of themselves. What would you say to that? I know, I'm sure you've ran into that as well.
1,000%, and I mean, it's why I was so excited to have this conversation with you just because the title of mental stillness.
Mhm.
Like, yes,
Sign me up.
I wanna be part of that, sign me up,
Yeah,
I want it, I wanna be part of helping other people have it, but we own that real estate. Truth. Like, no matter the conditions of life, which I recognize are very difficult for some people right now, no one can make you think anything. And there is a frighteningly powerful militia of behavioral scientists, engineers and coders, advertisers, and stockholders who want to make you think things. So I think that's the first thing I always say to people is like, let yourself off the hook, right? Don't feel like you're an idiot or weak or lazy for having all this mental noise. We are a little bit victims to a system of attention economy right now. And it is stoppable. We can resist it. We can find the mental stillness, but we have to. We have to make a choice. We have to make a conscious choice, an effort to reclaim the real estate of our heads, which is very scary because it feels like that should be maybe special or safe, but it's not. So that's the first thing is just let yourself off the hook for the challenge of it and recognize that it needs to be a choice, recognize that you're not going to be perfect at it right away, but that it is very worth making a habit and then just start small and experiment. If it's running, great. If it's cooking, great. Make, and start small. Like maybe it's a run around the office if you have the privilege to not look like a total maniac running a lap around your home office or whatever it is. Or, doing some squats if it's physical energy. Great. Get up from your desk and do a dozen squats. If it's cooking, if all you have time for is cereal and the milk, breathe a little deeply and pour the milk artistically in a swirl. Like really start tiny because it is a muscle and you will build it and it will counter the infrastructure of more, 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 always on, always external into a little bit of mental stillness that then allows for the clarity of what really matters.
absolutely. The permission, like I forget the phrase you said earlier, but that is so spot on of like the permission to exhale, the permission to, um, to take a moment. I like thinking of it this way, to give people permission to move things from the noise pile to the background noise pile. It's like give yourself permission to have don't think because there's background noise I'm failing. It's like, no, the background noise probably isn't gonna go anywhere. Like you said, there's people who are spend a lot of advertising dollars to put noise in our lives, and then just our physiology is going to stress and all that's gonna be internally producing noise. We're not gonna
Mhm.
get rid of all of that, but it's like, how do I sit with and be okay with there is background noise, but I don't have to give it more energy than it needs.
Mm,
It can be
mm,
on, but I don't have to be so in tune to it, so, uh, entrapped by it. It can be there, and I can still do my thing over here, and I'm not
yeah,
broken, flawed, doing something wrong because I can't drown out all the background noise. It's there.
yeah,
What am I gonna do
yeah,
despite it, I guess is my point.
yeah. A point I like to get because I think, in the world that we work with of high achieving, impact seeking, ambitious people, eh, often what I turn to is how other people need and want you. So, like, think about your boss, really. And again, I know there are some horrible bosses out there, so maybe accept them. But most bosses who are not like super charitable or progressive or anything, but just who want the company and the team to run well, do they want you? in the noise, constantly frenzied and never mentally still? No, no. That you might imagine that they want an email back in 45 seconds, but if you're being honest, would they rather have it back in 45 minutes or even in 24 hours with some reflection, clear takeaways, a little research? That's that's what a good boss wants, right? Or a friend, like, how does your friend wanna sit across the 45-minute coffee date that you get once every 11 weeks, when things quiet down enough to let it happen? They want you present, and so if nothing else, then for their sake, the boss, the kid, the neighbor, the yoga class, whatever, try to summon that for them if it doesn't feel like it's worth it for your own benefit.
Back to the systems part of I mean, I think
Mhm.
that's a connection, right? It's like how we show up, um, is oftentimes what we give to other people. It's like, what do I wanna leave them worse off? Do I wanna leave them with my with my chaos, or do I wanna in because there's something also contagious about stillness and the peace, that if I can show up with that, like, I'm doing the system good. I'm doing me good, but I'm also that person I care and love, that I love, like, I don't know, my intentionality and my thoughtful presence can do good for them too.
It's the simplest role, right? In that role step, if people are having trouble making sense of, like, what might that be, it's that. It's modeling mental stillness for the people around you.
What did you learn? Because I know, like, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, horses being in Kentucky
Mm.
and horses being a big deal, here, especially as we gear
They
up for the
sure
Derby.
are.
Um,
Yes.
but yeah, what have horses taught you? Like, first of all, why am I bringing up horses to you? Like, tell a little bit about your history with horses and maybe what they've taught you about leadership and
Yeah,
people.
yeah. So I grew up riding a little bit, I didn't have access to be on horses every day by any stretch, but anyway, grew up riding a bit, left it while I was living in Tokyo and Palestine and Manhattan because it just
You
wasn't
couldn't
really a
pack your
thing.
horses with you? Yeah.
No, they don't travel well. But I got back to it 5 or 6 years ago, somewhat adjacent to COVID, which a lot of people, I think, found nature, which was great. And then when I closed my company, I was kind of, I was writing, but I was looking for other ways to be in the world and contribute in this work. And I apprenticed with a woman in Santa Fe in equine-assisted learning. So people might know of horse therapy, which is an incredibly powerful tool. I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach. And so I do it with healthy leaders and teams who, have probably done a lot of coaching or other work on themselves or on the team. And they feel like they're just still more to do, and we bring in horses. We don't ride, we just hang out with the horses, but, the technical element of the work that's unique, probably not a massive surprise, especially for you being such an expert horseman down in Kentucky, is that it's nonverbal because horses don't speak. So, from being, these very intellectual, heady, smart, strategic leaders who have these great conversations about what they need or what their team needs, all of a sudden there are no words. It's just the feelings and the energy between us, which horses can read very well because they are prey animals, right? So horses move through the world being worried about the mountain lion that might come. They have to be deeply tuned into their environment to survive. They're one of the most successful mammals in all of Earth's history. They've survived very effectively. And there's so many lessons that come out when we are in the arena with these horses, and it depends where people are and what they need. But the number one universal biggest thing that I love to offer is that horses are experts at conserving energy. Not because they have a great coach like you, but because they have to. Because everything they do, every calorie they burn reduces the chance that they will have enough power to get away if a predator does come. And so it's just evolutionary strategy. But what that
Self-preservation, right?
self-preserve totally, Totally. And so the example that I love to use is that if horse number 1 is drinking at a stream, let's say, and horse number 2 comes up and tries to drink, but horse number 1 is kind of like, this is my water source right now, so I don't really feel comfortable with you being here. They flick an ear. Now, that's a pretty small movement for a 1,200-pound animal, but at least 8 times out of 10, that horse number 2 is like, ooh, got it. Sorry. And we'll go upstream, we'll come back later, whatever it is, right? If horse number 2 is like really hot, upstream is muddy, they really want this water, maybe they stay in a few cases. Horse number 1 now will flick the tail. So a few more calories burned, maybe there's a little contact directly with the tail. And like 1.8 out of the 2 remaining times, horse number 2 is like, got it, backing off. Only then, if the horse doesn't move, would horse number 1 kick or gesture to bite or actually bite, right? And so what this is this starting with the least possible effort to achieve a desired result, escalating only if and when needed. And so that one, to me, for leaders, for parents, for community members, for voters, for board members, that is a really different way of showing up than I see in a lot of the meetings and conversations that I'm in.
Yeah. Straight to escalation, right?
And look, not in a crazy yelling way, which certainly also happens. Also just in a preparation way. I have this report due. Okay, I'm going to read all the meetings from the last quarter. I'm going to do some competitor research. I'm going to alphabetize it. I'm going to talk to 4 other colleagues and do it and deliver this 42-page, 5 appendices report. Now, I have nothing against excellence or commitment. And who's receiving that? And do they have time to read that? Did the 4th interview
Is
add
that what
value
they
after the
asked for,
3rd?
right?
Is that what they asked for? Or did they want, like, eyeball, go through the quarterly meetings, maybe the AI notes, and do, a summary paragraph of the vibe of this project right now with a few bullets of risks and opportunities, for example? Right? So this over deliver, which so many high achievers, ambitious people have, especially women or people of color or anybody who is kind of traditionally marginalized. I'll do more and then I'll be appreciated. Fall into that trap, and it's brutal because you're exhausted. Your receiver, to your point, didn't even want that, so they don't appreciate it or use it.
Now I gotta
It's
read
not good.
this? Like,
Yeah, correct.
no, that is incredibly practical. How you make decisions and being a bit more calculated. It seems like a very strategic, measured response at every step of the way of the horse.
It's why I love them as teachers because it's not like, the Pareto principle. I think we all know 80/20, and that's helpful. But when you see it like in nature, it gets pretty unarguable.
I don't know, what would you advise, a step in the direction towards this subtraction method, like, to help them become more clear or maybe even more hopeful?
Yeah, 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 fair. Big ask, but I'll try. Um, Again, no one size fits all. That's one of the first subtractions. And so I'll offer kind of 3 flavors. I'll label them, but use whichever appeals. But I would say if you think of yourself as sort of like a soul philosopher level person, my invitation is to just sit with the reality that we are embedded in systems, that the world isn't linear, it's not cause effect, black, white. It's an interconnected, complex system. And that is a phenomenal opportunity once you realize it and present some challenges. But so, literally, just that, like, just try on that hypothesis for 60 seconds as you're brushing your teeth or in a meeting as you're observing or, whatever it is. Just try that on if that kind of philosophical level is where you need something, want something. If you think of yourself as a like grounded, like body person, notice how you move through the world. And if and when you stub your toe or bump into a moving object like I do, like a shelf or a bookshelf or
Same,
a door,
same.
you know, that's
In our defense,
data.
the world is moving. The Earth is moving.
Fair. It's very fast,
Yep, yep.
actually. Yeah,
It's
fair.
amazing I'm standing upright. So
It's it's been 40 minutes of total static success. But just notice that. Like those are these little mini collisions where we're not in touch with where we are in the world. That's interesting. And if you're somewhere in the middle of kind of like probably a lot of listeners are kind of like executor strategy head people, then look at your calendar and pick a thing to experiment with taking off for the week. And maybe taking off means being off video and either asking or just implicitly kind of multitasking and lurking in that meeting. Maybe it means not going at all. Maybe it means delegating someone to go on your behalf, whatever it is. And just experiment, see how that feels. Did you miss real connection? Did you miss real data and information in your job? Did you miss some credibility that you weren't in the room? Or did it not matter?
maybe
So
maybe it
those are a
mattered
few.
less than I thought it mattered. Right?
Maybe, maybe that has happened to me.
Yeah. Well, and again, the experiment part of it, like you said, it may reveal things that mattered more than I thought. Or maybe I needed that. Maybe it's more important for me to be there, and I didn't realize that until I subtracted it. It's okay. It's okay
Totally.
to add it back too, right?
1,000% full permission, more permission. I think, and that's where I just encourage people to like the boundaries thing. I am so glad that you contrast that because I think it kind of sounds good and feels like a should, but just to run with the meeting example, which is simple, but a lot of our lives are determined by meeting schedules. So look, there might be a recurring meeting where you don't have decision-making authority or you're above the people who do and you have direct reports in there. You never speak up or rarely speak up because it's not something you care about. There's AI notes after. And so it's kind of easy to be like, that's dumb. Like I shouldn't be in that meeting. And maybe you shouldn't. And it might be that a cross-functional counterpart is in that meeting. And the 3 or 4 minutes before the meeting gets organized or after it breaks, you get to check in about your kids or dinner or what's going on in the rest of their department. And those 3 or 4 minutes might be worth you going to this meeting every week. Right? So it's not about rigid boundaries. It's just about looking systematically and understanding where the time is best spent.
Very well said, Nell. I
Thanks.
share with the audience how they can stay in touch with your work,
Hmm.
connect with you. Share that, please.
Yeah, would love that. So my Substack is called Subtract to Succeed. And it is my laboratory right now. It's really fun. It's where I'm writing and interviewing folks and researching for my book. There's a daily practice, there's a mini course, and I have, if I haven't already or I will, share a guest pass because some of that is paywalled, some of it is public. But I'm super happy for your folks, mental stillness people, to be in there with me playing with subtraction. And there's a ton of content that isn't paywalled, so people are free to come hang out there. And then I'm certainly easy to find on LinkedIn and happy to connect there. I just find it a little bit less authentic conversation these days, so I'm playing more on Substack.
Well, thank you for the pass, and thank you for your generosity with that, and just the
Totally.
conversation in general. I
Mm,
really appreciate your perspective on things, and just the practical nature of helping people kind of change their I don't know, change their situation. So thank you for leaning into that, and also for
mm.
sharing your own personal connection to that journey as well. So that means a lot. So
Yeah.
really
No, I
appreciate your time.
appreciate your um frame for this, right? I think the key to success in all three dimensions is connecting mental health and our individual being and leadership. I mean, I just think that that is such a crucial determinant of how far forward we get in the very prosperous, very lovely, equitable, joyful world that we could create right now, or not. And I think your themes and conversations will inform the outcome. So thank you.
Well, thank you for your time. And
Yeah.
again, appreciate the conversation.
Likewise, Derek.